يا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله.
Basically, when we discuss Surah Nisa, and what could be a better time to talk about feminism and women's rights? It's a high topic for these days, right? So I kind of wanted to include something on it, because Islam, oftentimes in the media, especially the Western media, we're under this banner that Islam oppresses women, right? Islam oppresses women, or it doesn't give them their rights, or it doesn't allow them to fight for their rights. So these type of captions we often hear. So this was something I want to address, and through this surah, inshallah, as well. The first point I want to make was that we have to look at things in their context, right? So when you talk about women's rights, these type of notions that Islam laid down is in a book which is 1400 years old. Okay? When you talk about women's rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave in that area, firstly that geographical area which is known for Arabs and Bedouins, the uncivilized people, right? The civilized communities were your Byzantine Empire and your Sassanid Empire, which is your Persians, right? So these two were your civilized communities. So these, geographically, this was an isolated area, right? It'd be like talking about what happened in the Amazon, okay, in today's terms, or maybe the Eskimos, right? Something like that. So these, in such a geographical location, 1400 years ago, Allah sets up such laws, such rights that have been consistent over a period of time and have been applied, and without, which we claim that without injustice, there's no injustice done in this case, right? But there is a system being prescribed. So if we look at the opposite side of that, if you look into women's rights as conducted by the West, so let's look at some of their history. Let's actually evaluate whether they have any right to talk about this, and whether they have any standpoint to actually come and try to put the scale up to Islam and see whether it matches up to their scale or not. Let's see if they have that higher moral high ground or not. So the first thing I want to talk about is that these women's rights that have become very common for us to know, right, in terms of the worldly sense. The first thing is the right to own the right for women to own their own money, right? Right of women to own property. Okay, now we read this today, no problem. Yeah, Islam says it in the Quran. What's the big deal, right? But Islam said it when? 1400 years ago. Now, in the Western world, this right to own property was given in the most developed country of the world, in Mississippi, in 1839. Okay, Mississippi allows women to own property in their own names. It's the first state in America to do so. Okay, and look at in US 1844, 5 years later, married women in Maine become the first in the US to win the right to separate economy. Basically, they can open their own businesses and stuff, right? In 1845, women given the right to file patents in New York. And I think I missed the stat on that one. The right to vote was given in, I think, also in the 18th century. Okay, so this is just 200 years ago, or less than that, right? Less about 180 something years ago. So women gained the right to file patents in New York, right? Married Women's Property Act is passed in New York. It's later used as a model for other states, all of which passed their own versions by the 1900s. Okay, so these rights of owning property in the most developed country in the world, which champions itself as a feminist movement, just gave these rights to their own people 100 years ago. Whereas Islam gave it 1400 years ago to women. Okay, France in 1881, France grants women the right to own bank accounts. 5 years later, the right is extended to married women who are allowed to open accounts without their husband's permission. The US does not follow suit until the 1960s. So to open your own bank account, you need a basically husband's approval, NOC, from the husband, right? And the UK lags until the 1975 to allow women to have their own maintenance. So this is one aspect of it. This is the worldly aspect of it, right? Now let's look at what the church was debating. From the other side, from the spiritual side. The church was debating at this point, are women even human? Do they even have a soul? Okay, at this point, they're debating whether women even have a soul. Are they like animals, like dogs and cats? Or do they actually have rights as human beings, as we have rights? So this was a debate that was going on in the 1500s, 1600s. So this was, again, another 12 centuries after the Prophet, about 1200 years later. So this was, and we all know what happened in the late 1800s. Basically, the witch hunts, where women were, just for being intelligent or having their own ideas, they used to be burnt alive. They used to be labeled as witches and burnt alive. So this is all going to be, this is what I'm trying to say, how do you claim to have the higher moral ground for this, right? But we have to look at another thing. Maybe they argue that, this was, it's true, we were like that, but now we're progressing, we're evolving, so we're learning from our mistakes. That can be an argument that's made, right? So now that we are advanced and we are matured, now we realize that women should have had those rights, and we are progressing in that way. So let's look at some of the results of this type of thinking. Now, this is an opinion by a researcher who said that feminists are confusing nudity with liberation. Okay, and if you actually, I read parts of the article. It's actually it's quite a good point. She says that when women get out, and like they had a march in Ukraine, the feminist movement out where it was a nudist march. Then other celebrities often do this type of things to get and claim it's because of feminism. And then they actually had a research that actually what this does is the most demographic that gets happy with this action is actually the men, right? To this type of thing. So what you've actually done is not actually put women up on the scale. You've actually brought them much down. Okay, it has nothing. This liberation has nothing to do with your clothes. You're feminist, right? So how have these two things been now joined and actually led to progression and actually advance? Okay. Now let's see if their claim is true or not. The fact that they're saying that this has enhanced the lives of women. Okay. Now they are freer to work. They are freer to own property. They're freer to property. I was going to Islam. They're freer to do just as they like, right? And their bodies, their choice type of thing. Okay. So this type of what has this led to? This has led to, one study found that 89% of sex workers that had to leave the industry but said that they didn't have other options. And this research was done in the Scandinavian countries. This is a Swedish model. Okay. And they have said that these people actually don't have the choice. You think that once they've left the home, right, now they don't have a husband providing for them. They don't have a family, they don't have a security of a family. They have to do, by hook or crook, they have to earn the money. And 89%, that is a resounding figure. That is not saying, we're not saying 60-40 here. This 89%. They're saying that if we didn't have to do this, we won't do this. This is slavery. There's no other better way to put this is slavery.
Then they say that, why do you objectify us?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So another thing also is this: if this was a progression and this was a useful progression, actually benefited the women, then we have to ask another question. All right.
So this feminism, does it talk about liberation from this perspective that apart from having free choices, that they also say that they are totally free from men, that men don't have any responsibility over them?
Yeah.
Is that what they say as well?
Yeah.
I
See,
mean,
feminism, I was discussing, it comes in many waves. After the World War II, it came in different waves, and each time there was some reform in feminism, and there was it's like any ideology which over time kind of becomes more and more reform. So the first wave of feminism came after World War II, and in that it was much more conservative. Okay, then after the the French Revolution, all these things happened, right, in the Industrial Revolution. Then it became a lot more about liberalism. Okay, then, and this is the second, third wave actually confused it, where a lot of the confusion, the time the hippies came and all that, so they confused a lot of something which they consider liberalism as feminism, and this is what actually got to downfall. Now, the rights of women movement, this in itself is not an even movement for itself, right? Because the next slide actually says, we're looking at now, is their claim correct? If they're saying that we have evolved, we have learned from our past, that these things should be given, and this actually helps society. So let's look at another statistic. Let's not look at just the females, but let's look at society and the family as a whole. So the question we're asking is, does this make society a healthy society or not? Okay, what actually happens when women go out of their homes and go out of the prescribed role? Because Islam does prescribe a role for them. Okay, there's no two ways about it. There's no sugarcoating that. There is a desired function for them, right? Allah compares it to the sun and the moon. Okay, the sun comes out in the daytime, it has a function, people go out and work, and that's what they do, right? And moon is for tranquility, it comes out, it's a tranquil light, it's for basically just finding the way during the travel, and it's calmness, it has its own different function. Right? And this is how Allah SWT often describes the relationship between men and female, men and women, basically. It talks about these two things, that they are functionally different. The concept of equality comes second. No one says the sun is equal to the moon. It's not apple to apple, you're comparing. It's two different things. Yeah, you can say different women should compare among themselves. Men should be compared among themselves. And this is what we do, right? Psychologically, we never put a man and a woman in the same boxing ring. That by itself would be unjust, although it's equitable. Right? So this is how you have to look at these aspects. Now, I'm talking about the broader society. What effects this has on the broader society? This statistic shows that in the last 10 years, births of children outside of marriage has increased by a great percentage. So around 20% that it was in the 1950s is now up to 72% by 2010. And I can assure you that's probably gone more up in 2020, 10 years later. Okay? And this article actually, these three lines that it's showing, is actually showing the different nationalities. So it's showing, these are for black people, and this shows all groups is the average, and then the Hispanics, and you have your white people. This is in the US. What the analysis or the take home was that these children that will be born from this hole are inevitably going to be born into criminal lives. A great percentage of them are not going to go to school properly. They're not going to have a French education. A lot of them are either going to die or end up in jail. They won't even reach the age of 30. Okay, so this demographic went on to actually go and show this effect. That's
by a white man?
Huh?
Was this research done by a white man?
No, I don't think so. Because actually, the reason why that black number is more, I looked into this actually. What it is that before a certain period, they considered everybody non-white as black. So it could include a lot of other demographics.
The brownies.
Yeah.
No, but the black community is the unmarried births and stuff is exceptionally high compared to other races in the US. Exceptionally high.
Okay. So this is very very alarming for anyone. So you can now understand that a society that functions on this basis and this if it gets this basis wrong of marriage and how to conduct that portion, how much ripple effect that will have in society. Okay, and what chaos that's going to create. And we are seeing it today, and we are seeing this today.